Today, the greatest illusion of modern society is believing that the money you see when you log into your bank account is truly yours. We have been systematically and covertly conditioned to accept an era of absolute financial, all-encompassing web, where every single transaction, every cup of coffee purchased, and every single penny saved leaves an indelible digital footprint for massive corporations, central banks, and governments to monitor. We live in a world where your access to your own livelihood depends entirely on the compliance of a network. If the system decides to block your access tomorrow, if an algorithm flags your activity by mistake, or if a centralized administrative directive freezes the servers during an economic panic, you lose your ability to survive in a matter of seconds. We have willingly transformed ourselves into helpless hostages of abstract numbers floating on a glass screen. Our grandparents, however, possessed a radically different, far more rugged and resilient wisdom regarding the meaning of true ownership and personal freedom. They did not trust the security of their lives to third-party intermediaries, much less to faceless corporate institutions and volatile state bureaucracies. They built solid, untouchable, multi-generational wealth from absolute zero by keeping total control of their hard-earned assets under their own physical custody, completely away from the radar of the traditional financial market. They understood a foundational economic law that modern society has spent decades trying to erase from your mind. True wealth grows in absolute silence, structural privacy, and total autonomy. In this documentary, we will pull back the curtain on the secret guide to invisible wealth that allowed them to thrive through the worst crises of the past, providing you with the exact blueprint needed to break this digital dependency and reclaim your financial sovereignty. 1. The invisibility compass in the modern digital landscape. People are constantly and aggressively conditioned to flaunt every little achievement, every minor luxury purchase, and their entire daily lifestyles on public social media networks. This vain, attention-seeking behavior not only attracts the immediate attention of malicious actors, criminals, and scammers, but it continually activates the most ruthless, predatory radar of all, the state's fiscal tracking and taxation apparatus. The old-timers operated under a completely inverted survival logic. They were guided throughout their commercial lives by what we can call the invisibility compass. For them, the ultimate golden rule of building an empire from scratch was clear, unyielding, and absolute. If no one knows the true size of your wealth, no one can create mechanisms, taxes, or laws to take it away from you. Living soberly, far below their actual financial capabilities, and completely without visual ostentation, eliminated the artificial social pressure to consume trivialities, futilities that continuously bleed the cash flow and mental energy of the modern worker, while the mainstream market, commercial advertisers, and nosy neighbors tried to decipher that family's real financial standing. The elders used anonymity as a massive, impenetrable strategic shield. It allowed them to quietly negotiate land deals, purchase livestock, and accumulate real assets in absolute silence without ever inflating local marketplace prices by their mere presence or broadcasting their next move to competitors. Bringing this compass into the 21st century means adopting intentional, tactical silence over your operations. When you deliberately remove your earnings and milestones from the public spectacle, you actively sabotage the banking algorithms that track your behavioral profile just to push high-interest credit lines, lifestyle upgrades, and consumer debts disguised as personal success. 2. The physical hardware of wealth. The vast majority of today's population foolishly trusts the ultimate fate of all their daily sweat, time, and life energy to pieces of plastic and volatile, easily altered digital records stored in corporate cloud servers. Our grandparents, on the other hand, knew by bitter historical experience, hype, and sudden systemic resets that paper money issued by the state is inherently unstable and systematically designed to lose value continually through the invisible, destructive tax of inflation. Therefore, the absolute foundation of their strategy to rise from absolute zero was the immediate conversion of weak, fluctuating fiat currency into the physical hardware of wealth. tangible assets that possess physical weight, real-world utility, undeniable historical durability, and absolute mathematical scarcity. Instead of accumulating empty promises of payment, fluctuating stock options, or digital tokens, they focus their surplus capital on acquiring high-quality forged iron tools, durable industrial machinery, minted gold or silver coins, and, above all, fertile agricultural land. If the town bank suddenly closed its doors, or if the government decreed an overnight confiscation of citizens, survenes a catastrophic economic phenomenon that has repeated itself dozens of times throughout global history. This sovereign family remained completely untouched. The land was still there, ready to produce food and sustain life. The tools remained sharp and functional for independent production, and the precious metals maintained their universal, undevaluable purchasing power across different cultures and borders. Today, applying this ancient habit means radically changing your metric of success. You must stop counting your wealth solely by your digital app balance and aggressively convert a percentage of your earnings into physical realities that do not require an internet connection, electrical power, or a bank manager's permission to retain their intrinsic value. 3. The private credit ecosystem. Modern financial education tries to convince you that to start a commercial business, expand an enterprise, or acquire a high-value asset, you absolutely must secure a commercial bank loan, sign a long-term financing contract, or beg for approval from a centralized credit rating institution. Our grandparents provably demonstrated that this model is a predatory trap specifically designed to keep the working class permanently enslaved to a cycle of debt. To bypass the monopoly of the big corporate bankers, they built and utilized a highly decentralized network of financing and mutual cooperation based strictly on personal reputation, deep community ties, and an unbreakable word of honor. Before mass banking invaded society, if a young, ambitious worker wanted to acquire a piece of land to farm or heavy machinery to build a workshop, they didn't fill out electronic credit forms or subject their personal lives to a corporate algorithm. They negotiated directly with the owner of the asset or with respected community members who possessed an excess pool of capital. The repayment structure was built entirely on fixed installments tied to future production cycles or through the direct bartering of specialized services, completely eliminating the compounding interest rates that routinely destroy modern businesses today. The great defining gear of this ecosystem was the absolute value of one's word. Failing a community agreement meant instant social death, a permanently ruined name, and the absolute end of any future commercial or social opportunity. In the current economic landscape, you can rescue this principle by creating direct business alliances, peer-to-peer, profit-sharing partnerships, or direct vendor financing agreements with other trusted entrepreneurs, completely cutting out the financial middleman's abusive toll. 4. The Asset Firewall Method. Global economic history is a massive, tragic graveyard of fortunes that were summarily erased overnight by sudden political coups, government-induced hyperinflations, wars, or systemic chain bank failures. Those who naively left all their accumulated assets exposed in the official structures watched a lifetime of hard work evaporate with a single legislative stroke or an institutional collapse. To ensure that the family wealth was permanently shielded against these unpredictable political storms and institutional crises, our grandparents mastered the Asset Firewall Method, the strategic fragmentation, diversification, and deliberate concealment of their resources across completely different layers of physical security. They strictly followed the ancient rule of never putting all their economic eggs in one single basket. A smaller, highly controlled portion of their capital operated openly in the visible banking economy, serving merely to cover immediate daily subsistence costs and pay mandatory baseline taxes to avoid unnecessary friction with authority. However, the true, substantial core of the family wealth was protected behind an invisible barrier of domestic privacy. Values were quietly kept in physical safes, camouflaged in the false bottoms of heavy wooden furniture. Hidden compartments built directly under the stone floors of their properties, or legally recorded in private agreements that stayed far away from the state's registry archives until it was strictly necessary to reveal them. To build your own asset firewall today, you must decentralize. Stop keeping your capital concentrated in a single financial institution or country. Seek absolute self-custody of mathematically scarce assets and create private reserves that sit completely outside the automated tracking circuit of the mainstream banking cartel. 5. The law of emotional retention. The greatest and most profound psychological secret that allowed the old-timers to build impressive empires. Starting from absolute zero while the current generation drowns in credit card debt and predatory subscription models, was their total mastery over consumption impulses. Modern marketing and financial engineering were specifically designed to make you spend your money as fast as possible, utilizing frictionless digital payments to feed an infinite, toxic cycle of buying temporary social status. The elders, on the other hand, rigidly applied the law of emotional retention, the non-negotiable rule that any significant influx of money entering the house could never be spent, allocated, or promised on the exact same day it was received. There was a mandatory cooling-off period, lasting several days, which was strictly enforced to break the instant dopamine spike and the natural psychological euphoria that accompanies financial gain. They understood that the human mind, when under the intoxicating effect of having cash readily available, completely sabotages itself by overestimating superfluous desires and underestimating long-term security. Furthermore, they knew how to perfectly differentiate the shallow cost of an object from its real long-term structural value. An expensive high-quality tool that would increase the family's productivity for 30 years was seen as a priority investment. A fine, delicate garment made only to impress others on Sunday was seen as an unacceptable waste of vital life energy. Reintroduce this intentional friction into your finances today. Force your extraordinary profits and monthly income to sit completely idle for a while before making any non-essential decisions. Keeping cold, calculated rationality, and absolute command of your resources. The legacy of sovereignty. When we step back and analyze these 5 forgotten habits, it becomes glaringly evident that the major difference between the generation that conquered financial adversity from zero and the current generation is not a lack of modern technology, but the quiet loss of our personal sovereignty. We have willingly accepted trading our authentic freedom and our fundamental privacy for the shallow convenience of bright smartphone, screens, contactless payments, and easy credit approvals, voluntarily handing over the keys to our financial future into the hands of a centralized system that actively profits from our constant dependence. Reclaiming these 5 pillars is not a primitive step backward into history, but an essential, sophisticated self-defense manual for navigating the volatile economic landscape of today. Building real, lasting, and untouchable wealth does not require you to be a Ganio of digital speculation but rather that you possess the raw discipline to accumulate what is tangibly real and the courage to protect your wealth entirely outside the traditional financial ecosystem. Use the advanced technological tools of the present, but wield them with the independent mindset of the past. Withdraw a portion of your daily effort from the commercial banking circuit. Build your own private layers of protection and take absolute control of your financial story, once and for all.